Hi, everyone. Ashley Mailloux, David Aragona, looking at the Thursday race of the day for June 19th. We go to New York, Belmont at the Big A. They have an 8-race program. We'll focus on the 7th race, which is a turf event. It's a really nice field, David, of 10 totally entered in here. Obviously, when you go towards the outside of the starting gate, you have some main track only runners, but doesn't feel necessarily like an allowance optional claiming event. This feels a little bit more like potential lower level stakes caliber runners.
Yeah, this is a stakes quality field. You've got plenty of horses in this race that have been competitive in graded stakes in the past, and some of them that could be competitive in graded stakes in the very near future. The horse that I established as the morning line favorite, the number 2, Cugino, felt during his 3-year-old season like a horse that was just always on the cusp of breaking through at the graded stakes level. So we'll see if this is a springboard to that later in the year.
We will take a look at the time, form, pace projections for this mile and a 16th event. And looks like there is some speed towards the inside with the number 1, Big Everest, but also strong quality. Looking at those performances, typically more recently at a mile on the turf, I have to feel like these two could be, dueling early potentially.
Yeah, both of these are horses that love to control up front, and with each of them in the race, they're going to have to tangle with each other, and potentially even the number 6 exact estimate, who isn't necessarily a need the lead type, but is one that likes to race close up to the pace as well. So I at least thought it would be an honest pace, not one of those crawl fests that you sometimes see in the New York turf races.
And then do note the 3 noted has the LP flag attached. This one's going to get back onto the turf in the first start for the new connections. But we'll dive into it here with the number 1, Big Everest. This one was 4th last time out back in May, and just now making that second start of 2025, I feel like could take a huge step forward. But I just feel like, David, for a couple of reasons, he's a little bit of a tough sell in the top spot with the way that he just hasn't had a late turn of foot in those last several.
Yeah, this horse does love the turf course at Aqueduct. 5 of his 9 career victories have come here. I do feel he's a little bit better at the flat mile, Ashley, than he is going a little longer than that. I know he's won 3 races going a mile in the 16th, but he's always getting a little leg weary at the very ends of those races, and typically he can get the job done when he's able to control the pace up front. I'm just worried he might not have the opportunity to do that in this spot, given the speed drawn outside of him.
We'll take a look at the most recent performance, for the number 2, Cugino, which was all the way back in December down at Gulfstream Park. And it's in the Tropical Park Derby. And in terms of his trip early, he wasn't necessarily that far off of it, but he was in that back half of the horses in the field. And the wicked late turn of foot that he shows here in the stretch, I thought this was a huge performance, and nice to see him get back into the winner's circle.
Yeah, this was a horse last year that always looked like he was just right below the very top of that 3-year-old turf division. And arguably, he should have won a few more of those stakes races that he was entered in. He was prone to getting some less than ideal trips a few times. That was particularly the case when he lost a heartbreaker in the Transylvania going back to April of last year. And really, his only poor effort came when they tried to stretch him out at Kentucky Downs. The trip didn't work out, and you can always forgive horses for not running well at Kentucky Downs. But other than that, while he doesn't win all the time, he's generally right there at the finish of all of his races. So I'd expect a good effort coming off the layoff, but I do wonder if this might be a prep for a summertime goal.
The 3 noted up next, we mentioned earlier, has the LP flag attached now in a new barn and does enter this race off the 4th career victory, but a different ball game, a race that was for the turf, rained off over a sloppy track, just had 3 other competitors in there. And I go down the page, I'm not necessarily enamored by the turf form, David.
No, it's been a while since he's run a pretty good turf race. He's a horse who showed some ability during his 2-year-old season, but he was off form for a long time after that. I guess the fact that he got back to the winner's circle last time is at least a good sign. I hear you about it not being the strongest field in the world and obviously rained off the turf that day. But I will note he is claimed by Gus Rodriguez, who has been doing quite well over the past year in New York, especially with his new claims, though primarily on the dirt more so than on the turf.
The 4 strong quality, this one for Mark Cassie, was disappointing last time out. Didn't go off favored, took a lot of money. And I don't know how you assess the performance, David. I understand it was a turf race. It was rained off, but he did take a lot of play and he was not able to stay around at all. And you might have thought that his speed would have carried him a little bit over the off track. And now he's listed as a gelding for the first time and by far comes in here off a lowest buyer. I don't know how to assess his form.
This is one of those horses that I feel like I'm just never right about. When I don't like him, he runs well. When I like him, he's just nowhere. He is one of those horses that generally does his best work when he can control up front, and he can go pretty fast controlling a pace and still finish. But I agree with you, Ashley. The fact that he ran so poorly on the dirt last time, I do take as a negative sign because he's run well on the dirt before. So maybe that's a sign that he's just tailing off a little bit now as a 6-year-old, but we'll see if gelding him this late in his career makes a difference.
The 5 Forever Super, we'll take a look at his most recent performance out at Monmouth Park, where he's going to end up finishing 3rd in this event. But I think it's a good 3rd overall in the Cliffhanger. You know, in terms of the move, I don't know if it was necessarily early at all. I think this is how this horse typically goes and just gets out finished by 2 others.
Yeah, I don't think the rider Antonio Gallardo intended to move at the time that he did. The horse that was leading down the backstretch, you could see, was just totally empty by the time they got to the half-mile pole. So rather than get stuck behind that horse, he moved outside and just kind of inherited the lead, moving into the far turn. But still, not an ideal situation to take the race over that early when you're typically a horse that's finishing at the end of its turf races. This horse also did not get an ideal trip 2 back when he lost to a horse we'll get to in a little bit, Dataman. He was just stuck wide around the turns at Laurel. So he might be a little better than the last couple of results indicate, but he's going to have to save some ground here to have his best chance.
The 6 Exact Estimate, this one for Chad Brown. Flavian Pratt reuniting with this horse who he piloted early in his career, comes into this race fresh off a 2nd place finish. And we've seen this one twice now in 2025. I do think the 2nd start was a big step up, but typically, David, I look at these horses for Chad Brown and you kind of have to look at them, right? Especially in the grass, but I don't know. I think some of the figures are really, big and maybe catch your eye. I'm just not convinced on him, fully at this point.
Yeah, we could check out his most recent start down at Tampa, where he lost to Belmont. And I didn't think he had a big excuse to lose this race, actually, because he got to control things on the front end the way that he likes to. The pace was honest enough, but it's not like they were going really fast up front. And he just gets run down by a horse that I personally am not the biggest fan of. So I do hold it against him a little bit. And also, Ashley, you were kind of getting at this. For a horse that's run some pretty big speed figures during his career, Chad Brown has always managed this guy pretty conservatively, just running in those handicap and allowance races, only trying stakes company once before. So I wonder how much upside he really has.
The 7 Dataman, we mentioned we're going to talk about him a little bit later. We'll take a look at one of his performances. We won't look at the Eclipse. We'll go back to a turf event at Laurel Park. And I thought this was a really big effort. The signs of a horse that's, has some potential. And we know he has potential. Go back historically, he's run some big races. And I'm going to draw a line through the last out effort. But, David, when you watch this, the way he gets through, I thought he was extremely game splitting horses.
Yeah, when this horse is able to get the right trip, held up towards the back of the pack, saving ground, and then finds the split in the stretch, he's got a really potent late kick, and he showed it in that spot. Wasn't able to use that style last time at Woodbine, Ashley, and I think we can just forgive that race because it was on an unfamiliar surface. He had never tried synthetic before, and furthermore, when you watch that race, Manny Franco was riding him for the first time, and I could tell he was kind of leaving for position in that race, like thinking he had to get forward, but he got cut off into the clubhouse turn. The horse got really rank underneath of him, and he just couldn't get him back after that, so he was fighting the rider on a surface that he's not really familiar with. So I'm just willing to draw a line through that race. And as you said, he's got plenty of good races. They tried stakes company a few times last year, didn't get ideal trips in a few of those races. And also those stakes races were going marathon distances, 3 turns. I think he's a little bit better going shorter. So this just feels like a really good spot for Dataman.
The 8 Masterpiece going to run out the main body of the field in terms of the turf runners. I'm sort of intrigued by this horse. I don't necessarily have the guts to use him, but he can fire big races. We saw that in May of 2024. I actually thought his effort 3 back, he ran pretty well out at Santa Anita. It's just, how do you assess his last 2? Tough waters, integration, deterministic. He's been in really deep spots. I feel like for him, this is class relief, and maybe getting to a course where he's had success could help him take a step up.
Yeah, he's got races in his past that would certainly beat this field, but he is a 9-year-old now, and you start to wonder when he puts those 2 clunkers back to back. I know they were on either side of the layoff, but you do wonder if he's getting a little bit long in the tooth at this point, and his performance off the layoff last time was pretty dull. Dutrow entered him in a couple of stakes last weekend, one at Monmouth and one at Delaware. He scratched out of both of them. I'm not sure that he's really getting an easier spot here running at a non-stakes event at Aqueduct because this is a stakes quality allowance race, but also, Ashley, watching the New York circuit, the Dutrow barn's been very quiet lately. I think he's won just 1 race anywhere in the past 2 months, which is a bit uncharacteristic for that stable.
And then finally, we'll just mention the 2 main track only runners, just in case the weather is not ideal. The 9 Strapped and the 10 Magnolia Midnight. I mean, in terms of figures, I think out of the 2 personally, Magnolia Midnight has the stronger figs, but both of them in terms of their recent performances, they've been really strong on the main track.
Yeah, both of those horses have nice recent form. There are a couple horses that are entered for turf, actually, that do have decent dirt form, like Strong Quality, Noted, who won that off the turf race last time. So this race wouldn't completely fall apart if it came off the turf.
All right, don't forget this is the Thursday race of the day, so free pass performances on the DRF website. We will move over to our top selections, and based on how we talked about them, I had a feeling we might both go in the same direction here with the number 7, Dataman. You know, we talked about having to forgive the last out effort, but I think when you watch that race at Laurel, I know it's not a stakes race, David, but once he gets clear, his turn of foot and the stride on him, I mean, he accelerates. And to me, he looks like the makings of a horse that's going to get better with age.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that Manny Franco learns from the last experience and adapts a little bit, isn't so aggressive coming out of the starting gate, just takes him back, gets him settled, and allows him to produce that late kick. Because I think when the trip works out for this horse, Ashley, he might be the most talented horse in this race.
David goes 7-2-5-6. I go 7-1-2-5. Don't forget, it's race number 7 this Thursday, Belmont at the Big A. Good luck.